Good evening, everybody. It's simply the best. It's a Tina Turner classic. Love that song. We're a huge pop wrestling podcast. My name is Scott Rogers. Huge pop. Tonight we have Wrestling with Purpose with CWF-Rockwall once again on a Monday night. Hope you guys came to get the word of the Lord and find out about this cool guy that's here. This man in front of me, in front of you guys, he calls himself Kid Cool, the man with the hands of steel. He's been with NWA. He was ROH crew now, and he's been with CWF. Welcome to the show, Seth Delay. How you doing, my friend?
Hey Scott, I'm doing great, man. Couldn't be more happy to be sitting here and talking to you tonight. This is an awesome opportunity, man. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. You're welcome. So like I ask everybody, man, what? Oh man, okay. As a kid growing up, you had to be a wrestling fan. Am I correct?
Of course, of
Can you
course.
talk? Can you walk us through your childhood and what kind of wrestling fan you were, what you like to watch, who your favorites, etc., etc.
All right. Well, I was born in 1985, so the literally the earliest memories and being born in Georgia, in Athens, Georgia, actually Georgia Bulldog territory. So Georgia boy, country boy, born and raised, but wrestling is life here. Obviously, football is life for a lot of people, but I was raised in a baseball home and a wrestling home at the same time, and born in '85, so that was classic rock and wrestling era with the WWF back in the day,
Yep.
and probably my favorite era, I think by far was that era, even though I was just born. But I remember, that was back in the day when my dad had those big camcorders.
Yep.
You go around filming everything, and dad was filming. I remember he was filming when I had the flu at 3 years old, in the hospital. But there's this one scene where he's filming me, and I'm up and I'm like staring at the TV, and I'm like, I'm entranced at the TV in the hospital with the flu, and I was in there for a few days. I think it was pretty bad. But I heard commentary, and it was Jake the Snake Roberts and Honky Tonk Man on the TV. So obviously, my dad turned it to that. So that weirdo watching wrestling while I'm sick in the hospital. But hey, no, it's just been in my blood ever since. So it's always been there, man. Wrestling has always been there. So I grew up a fan, and then rock and wrestling turned to sort of I guess you call it the cartoony clown era. Um, but hey, I loved it all the way through till the Attitude Era came along, and then that's when everybody wanted to get into wrestling right around that time, because that was the hottest time this world has ever seen, probably ever will see.
Right.
So
Right. So, did you have any favorite wrestlers that you like to watch? Were you a Hogan guy? Were you a Warrior guy? Were you no none of those?
obviously Hogan and Warrior, they I was listening to something today where some vet wrestlers were talking about Ultimate Warrior and how he was a character, more than a wrestler and everything. And but I mean that, now coincidentally talking about it tonight, that just he was larger than life, and Hulk Hogan as well. They got different at that, as how animated he would be. But I would just but for a kid though, it just gets your mind flowing. And to you, a 5-year old, they're making perfect sense. They're talking about something important. So obviously I loved watching them. But I was also a huge Jake the Snake Roberts and Million Dollar Man, Ted DiBiase fan. Loved Mr. Perfect. Loved Bret Hart. And as I got older and then became a wrestler, those were the guys that I loved watching. I loved watching Jake the Snake go, Macho Man, Perfect and Hart, Bret Hart, obviously, Shawn Michaels, without a doubt. Uh, but I'll just say this. I'll say this though, Hulk Hogan. I remember watching a match with him and Terry Funk from like 1988 or something, and I was like, my goodness, that match was fun to watch. And I actually took a lot of things, some fun spots that they put in that, because Terry Funk was the man, obviously, but
Right.
Hulk could go with anybody. He really could. I think he doesn't get enough credit for that sometimes.
No, I'm a Hogan guy. I stepped away from wrestling before the like in mid 90 early 90s, yeah. And I was watching it, and all of a sudden NWO shows up, and I'm like, yes, you know. But you mentioned Jake the Snake and Macho Man. One of my favorite, I remember it to the day. It's when Macho Man and Jake the Snake were wrestling, and Macho Man was trapped in the ropes, and that bite. Remember that? Yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah.
I mean, yeah, that back in that day, back in that era, that was excellent stuff.
Yes, it was.
You know,
I,
I know they could do it. I bet you how much more gruesome would it be today? You know,
hmm
so yeah, it's just crazy.
and and watching that as a kid, watching that snake bite, not just a snake bite, a cobra bite. You
Yes,
know, Macho is notorious for just being crazy off his gourd. So even back then, when that was kind of considered the wild west of wrestling,
yeah.
where just anything went. But Macho was just nobody liked him. It's like, just let him bite me. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Let him bite me.
that's what you want. And they had to block it out, black it out on the
Yeah,
screen because that's how scary it was. And I'll never forget the little kid's face.
yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I don't know what happened. You always froze up. You still there?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. So going through your childhood age, growing up in school and going to college, what inspired you to finally become a professional wrestler? Where was the moment you said, "Yep, I'm doing this"?
Well, college never came into play, man. That's like I said, halfway through school. So I was actually let's see, 13 years old. I was 13 when I made the decision that I was going to become a wrestler, and
13.
I'm trying to remember what that moment was. There was just things going on. I remember my parents had separated around that time, and my older brothers were not living with me anymore, and I was living with my step family. And at the time, I'm only 13, about to be 14 years old. You're in that indifferent stage. You're trying to figure things out. Like I'm kind of going into a rebellious stage, but so it's that time where you're really trying to figure things out in your where you're going and what you want to be and everything, but nobody knows what they want to be when they're 14 years old when you're really being serious about it. But at that, I'm telling you, I looked up at the heavens one day and said, God, I am going to be a wrestler if it's the last thing I do. And man, I chased it. From that moment on, it just became my complete focus, which would lead to NWA Wildside, at the time called NCW. Just happened to be 10 minutes down the road from where I lived. It was just,
Wow.
that was just God saying, I got you. You say you want
Yeah,
to do it, let's go.
absolutely, absolutely. So, can you describe to us training? What training school you went? Who trained you, and what does it feel like to let the fans know? I mean, even me, what does it feel like to bust your butt in that ring day after day to get to where you're at?
Oh, well, when you said, what does it feel like to bust your butt? I was feeling like you was about to say, what does it feel like to take a bump for the first time,
Oh, what's it feel like to take a bump?
the second time, third time? And there's a technique to it. And I'll never forget after my first few bumps. Oh, okay, I'll finish saying this and then I'll go back to where I was supposed to go with this story. But yeah, man, after my first few bumps, I couldn't keep my head. You're supposed to keep your chin tucked, so obviously when you slam back, you don't hit your head on the mat and give yourself a serious concussion, because
Right.
that can happen. But after your first few times of trying to, your neck muscles get strained, and I remember I couldn't keep my chin tucked, so it was just nothing I could do. I was terrified. I thought, I can't do this. My neck won't let me do it. It's not strong enough. I'm out of my element here.
Right.
Uh, but like I said, you know, when I decided I was going to be a wrestler, I thought that just meant it's either WCW or WWF, one of the two. And I didn't realize at the time independent wrestling exists, and not only exists, but it is it's the heartbeat. It is the absolute core of where wrestling, of the bloodline of wrestling, of how it gets to the big show. And so, and also, I didn't know at the time that NCW, what would also be NWA Wildside in Cornelia, Georgia, was, the growing hottest southern, southeastern, basically in the whole country. There was no promotion like it. And it's where, guys like AJ Styles, are, Ron the Truth Killings came from, R Truth, and shoot, I mean, multiple others, obviously. But so I told my mom I wanted to be a wrestler. And she, bless her heart, she went to work and found that school right down the road from me. And when I went for my first training session, the first man I met was AJ Styles, who was sitting in he's like 22 at the time, and he's sitting in his little black coupe, whatever sports car he was driving. And so he's the first guy that I ever met, and he was technically my trainer. He wasn't really the trainer of the school, but Rick Michaels was. But he let AJ pretty much do it because AJ was just gifted. He was just blessed right off the bat, and he was only like maybe 8 months in at the time, and so yeah, I mean, first night showing up at that NCW arena, and AJ showing me the ropes a little bit. Got a few bumps in the first time, kept hitting my head. It was a painful first night. Show up 2 nights later again on Thursday. First night was a Tuesday, then Thursday. And I remember that Thursday training. That second training session was a very memorable training session. It was very fun. And took, I mean, I have a picture somewhere from that training session. But that was the start of it, man. And then that place would, end up becoming a legendary place for independent wrestling. And I was 14 when that started. So 14 years old, I started rolling.
So have you ever received a phenomenal forearm yet?
Oh, heavens, yes, of course. And that man throws a forearm. Let me tell you, that's no joke. He didn't even have to fly to hurt me with it. He would just bop me with it. That's a lot of history with AJ. I was, a lot of people called me his protege back in the day, and I was, but at the time, I'm only 14 years old. How are 14-year-old boys like? We're annoying, we're aggravating. Yep. And AJ got that from me. I was like his little brother, but I looked up to him so much, even though I was so competitive against him, and I was determined to not just be as great as he was, but I wanted to be better. Yeah. I would tell him that I'm gonna be better than you, dude. Shoot, I can do anything you do and more. Not true. I can't do half of what he does, but I sure tried, and so that made for a fun dynamic for the time that I had around AJ. But that was, a lot of people tried to be like AJ over the years. Lots of guys, Seth Rollins, plenty of guys made their way, following in AJ's footsteps and taking that model after him. But, AJ was just a special guy. And I remember it wasn't even about how gifted he was. It was what he was like inside, and his, the spirit that man had, the faith that he had. My second training session, I said that was my most memorable. It wasn't just about the fun we had. After that night, he sat me down and asked me if I knew Jesus Christ. Wow. And he, we talked for a good few minutes, and I was coming off rebellious years, listening to, hard rock music, Marilyn Manson type stuff. And I think my mom got in his ear or something, and he was like, "You're going to stop listening to that Marilyn Manson. You're going to church this Sunday, and I want you to show up next Tuesday, and you're going to tell me what you learned at church."
Nice.
Boy, if I didn't show up at church that Sunday, and I sat in the back row, but I was listening to I was like, okay, what did he say? What did he just say? Okay, write notes. And then I showed up, and AJ never asked me about it on Tuesday. Of course, he just knew he got me. He knew I showed up.
Absolutely. Get you in the building, right?
Oh, yeah, he got me there, man.
My pastor, I was in a youth, and my pastor would tell me, if you just speak one word and someone hears it, they hear it. If they're in a room, they're going to hear something.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely, and that was, it didn't change me right away, but that seed planting, people don't understand how important that is a lot of times. Just that little, you're not always going to be the change agent, but you can be a seed planter. And that seed may go dormant, it may be buried, you may forget it's there, but it was planted, and just let God take care of the rest. And AJ was there was nobody like him when it came to that, man. He was truly special.
Now, would you say he's your mentor, or do you have mentors from training that you still pick their brains?
Well, AJ was obviously a very, he was one that I could always go to, and I could talk to him about anything. And I remember, because I thought it was good and that I started so young, but it also had its negative side because I went from being literally a very popular kid in school in my junior high, like, and maybe arguably the most popular kid in my school. Then the very next year, as I'm going into high school, I just completely went to the back burner. I wasn't a part of any school, no sports teams, no nothing. Didn't join any clubs whatsoever. Didn't hang out with friends because my world was wrestling from that point on. Everybody knew that. Um, so but anyway, I went through some real tough years during high school 'cause I couldn't pay attention in school. I didn't care about school, so I was do just enough to get by. And I remember, my parents couldn't get me to change, but what got me to change was Bill Barron's the guy and Rick Michaels, the ones who ran the show, to say, hey Seth, we are hearing you've got bad grades. So they actually grounded me and took me off the shows and said, you don't get to come back and wrestle until you bring us a report card or progress report in 3 weeks, whatever it was, and you better have all passing grades. It can be C's, but they better be all passing, no F's in there, or you ain't coming back.
There
And
you go.
I remember being so mad at the time that was happening to me, but AJ would be a guy that would come up and just say, hey, I love you, bro, and I got you if you want to talk to me if you ever need help. So always a great mentor as far as it goes. And there were others, obviously, but
Yeah, right. So, Kid Cool, the man with the hands of steel. Where did those wrestling names come from, man?
all right. So, how did Kid Cool start? Being 14 years old. Oh, okay. So I did a full-on year of training because I was too young. You're not supposed to be getting in doing shows at 14, 15, or 6. Like, you're supposed to wait till you're 18. Or if you have parental consent, okay. But usually, even then, you're taking on a tough task, doing that, weekly, every weekend, whatever. So, being from Habersham County, uh, our high school mascot was called the Habersham Raider, and so my first match when I just turned. Well, I didn't just turn 15. It was October of 2000. Yeah, October of 2000 was my first match, and so I was 15 years old. And I literally didn't have a name picked out or anything. I didn't have wrestling gear. You would go to Walmart and get their windbreaker pants. That was back when that stuff was kind of being done. And but I didn't have a name, and it was like, Seth Delay was like, that's not a wrestling name. And so our booker was like, well, obviously you're a kid, so we got to call you Kid something. So I was thinking like Kid Quick, Kid Crazy, Kid Cookie, Kid everything, whatever. And it was like, well, you're from the Raiders, so we'll call you Kid Raider. So Kid Raider was my name for like my first two matches, and then I always liked the idea of having like Kid something, but with a K, so Kid K something. And Ron True, R. Killings did the same thing. He was K Quick when he was coming through there. But I still like the idea, so that's how Cool finally got used. And obviously, you got to spell Cool with a K, or else it doesn't work.
Right, right.
Even though Cool Cigarettes is kind of what everybody was thinking I was talking about.
What are some of your favorite wrestling moments or matches, places to wrestle at?
Oh man. Well, obviously there was no atmosphere like wrestling in that NWA Wildside atmosphere, especially back then. Especially back when AJ Styles was on top back then. That was the hottest atmosphere that you could find. It's the reason NWA Wildside was the number one wrestling promotion. In at least the Southeast, without a doubt. So I mean, basically being raised there around the best talent that independent wrestling had to offer. Everybody came through there. Every big name would come through there at some point. But as far as other places, obviously you go up north and you wrestle anywhere up north, whether it be New Jersey, Philadelphia, whatever have you. You're always wrestling in front of really, fans. I mean, these people are fans. Um, you're not having to. They're not just showing up for a show and eating popcorn. They want to control the show like an orchestra. So you got to be on your A game, or else you'll be booed out of the building, kind of thing. So no, it's hard to compete with wrestling up north. But man, there was just nothing like a good old Southern NWA Wild Side atmosphere back in the day.
So you mentioned ROH as ROH crew, that's when CM Punk and Danielson came through there, etc. Did you meet those guys, or was it just a passing by? And if you met them, I'm a big CM Punk guy. I love them. I hope he shows up at Survivor Series. I don't know if he will. I don't care about the scrum. Whatever. I have my opinion about that. But what was that like to rub elbows with those guys?
Oh man. All right. I don't want to butcher this story, but so my first ever meeting with CM Punk, this wasn't with Ring of Honor, but it was with Ring of Honor's sister promotion called Full Impact Pro in Florida, which basically was Ring of Honor. It was just Ring of Honor in Florida because, Gabe Sapolsky, who everybody knew, was famous booker of Ring of Honor, would also go down to Florida and book there and bring all the guys down with him. So, once I graduated high school, man, I was hitting the road right away. 18, 19 years old, hitting the road and going down to FIP and meeting CM Punk. if I remember this right, I show up my first show, and I want to say I remember Samoa Joe was there, Homicide was there, CM Punk was there. Daniel Bryan wasn't there. He was somewhere else that night, but he was going to be coming through. And I shook CM Punk's hand, but I missed Homicide's hand or something like that. And so CM Punk made a point to to kind of call me out. It was like, "Ooh, kid, you getting heat on your very first night?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" It was like, finally I found out that I missed Homicide's hand, and obviously they're just playing a good rib. I'm only 19 years old at the time, so they're just messing with me. But that CM Punk was always the locker room leader. He was always his personality, his aura, and his ability, his love for wrestling. How good he actually is in the ring athletically or whatever, that's debatable. But that man, nobody could command a crowd. Nobody could direct a match, just control an atmosphere, control a crowd like CM Punk. And I remember I hadn't met Daniel Bryan yet, but I see CM Punk. So after trying to make amends with Homicide and make sure I had shaken everybody's hand, Samoa Joe's hand, making sure I didn't miss anybody, I go up to CM Punk, and he's peeking through the curtain watching a match, and I'm just trying to kind of get up next to him, rub elbows with him a little bit. Now, he wasn't superstar CM Punk yet. This was right before he got signed by WWE, maybe just a few months before. And but I'm trying to just talk to him, just kind of say something, try to sound cool standing next to him. And he looks at me and says, "Hey," he turns around to somebody and says, "Hey, doesn't this kid Seth look like Daniel Bryan?" I guess because we both had our hair kind of down on our foreheads, touching our eyes, everything. And yeah, the other guy was like, "Yeah, he does look like Daniel Bryan." And supposedly I was asked to potentially replace Daniel Bryan in a tournament somewhere, and I'm trying to remember the name of that tournament right now, but I was asked to replace Daniel Bryan when he couldn't make it. And so that's the first thing that popped in my head. It was like, "Oh, Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson." I was asked to replace him for something. And and Punk looks at me and says, "Oh, are you saying you're better than Daniel Bryan?" Is that, he was just messing with me right off the bat. He knew that this nervous kid trying to get next to him, and so he was always, just cutting on me. And then I remember he did his match. He comes back. He's sitting across from me. He's all, sweaty and everything. He's taking off his wrist tape, And he just looks over at me, and I'm just sitting in the corner, just trying to mind my business. And he takes it, and he wads up that tape and just goes, watch out, and just chucks it across the room and hits me, doink, right in the forehead. But it was just his way of just messing with a kid across the room.
Right.
And so that's just how, so he's messing with you, but he's also trying to bring you in. He's trying to make you feel comfortable. Um, so, for me, I'm nervous as everything, but looking back now, he was just one of the best, one of the best locker room leaders that you could ever see.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we talk about your favorite moments. Would you say back in 2003 July when you beat Sal Renaro to capture the NWA Wild side junior heavyweight champion be one of your favorites?
Oh man. Well, when Sal, there was a whole lot of history with Sal and Sal Renaro, who also went on to have a amazing career with Ring of Honor, and he's still going. He's still going to this day, and works with NWA Power to this day. He's one of the most creative minds that I've ever known, and so. But at 16 years old, I was put with him. I was called, so I was Kid Cool at the time, and he was going by Kid Ecstasy at the time, and so he was just starting to come through NWA Wildside, and I was wanting to have a singles career, but um, you know, I I'm wanting one thing. Bookers are saying, what are we going to do with these two kids sitting here? So they put me with Sal, Kid Cool, and Kid Ecstasy, and Sal was like 18, and I'm 16, about to be 17, and and so we started a legendary tag team called G Rated because we're both underage. And so we're both, we both only watch G-rated movies. We're just kids, kids amongst men, and that became just a incredible. I was watching a promo. People will send me promos all the time on my social media pages, and me and Sal cutting G-rated promos, and they were just so over the top, making fun of everybody, and uh, he was so much fun, and our energies matched each other, but at the same time, I wanted to be taken seriously. Sal always knew how to be light, and so we always had a good contrast to each other. We always worked well together and then against each other. So I was basically, when my career was just getting started, I was put with Sal against my wishes, and then it grew into a fun relationship, and then we were split up and we wrestled each other thousands and thousands of times. At some point, culminating in me beating him for the NWA Wildside Junior Heavyweight Championship. I wouldn't even say that was our best match. I mean, we actually had an amazing match in FIP years later, and it was a TLC match, not climbing to get anything. It was just a TLC match, tables, ladders, and chairs. So just use your weapons, and that was probably my favorite match I ever had with him. Um, there was we did some pretty incredible spots that night. But oh man, that guy, he can still go like nobody's business, and he would always get the absolute most out of me. So I always miss him, and I look forward to getting in the ring with him again.
Awesome, man. So you're in Georgia. You travel to Texas. Talked about New York, New England stuff. Are there any cool, funny road stories that you could share?
Oh man. Um, there is a lot of road stories. There is a whole lot of road stories. Um, Shoot, where to start? It. I think I'd love to be able to. I'll get to one here in just a second, but it's just every time you go out on the road. When I was going to Florida to do FIP after I graduated high school, once a month, uh, every single month, and this went on all the way until my mid 20s, until I decided to step away from FIP. But when you go on the road, you take it upon yourself to try to live like you're superstars, try to live like you're already in the big time, and act like nothing can touch you, nothing can hurt you. So it's like you're always looking for trouble. You're always looking to do something a little bit dumb when you're out there. So it was always something. But I remember this this one classic story um, with Sal Renaro. So I would have been right around 22 here. Um, so I had gotten a job as a salesman, and I was making really good money in this sales. This was right before the economic crash of 2009, 2010, whatever that was. So this was around 2008, I think. I had just bought a new car, and so Sal Renaro didn't have his own car yet. But we're going down to Florida, so this is a 8-hour drive, to go down to Florida, and we're just fine tuned for this drive. 8 hours is nothing back in the day. But for whatever reason, right after I bought this car, I chose to allow Sal to get behind the wheel of my brand new car. And we was maybe 4 hours down the road at this point. So we're in South Georgia. We're getting close to the border. And I told Sal, okay, you can have the wheel. And I remember having Bret Hart's autobiography in my lap as I'm sitting in the passenger seat. We also had a couple other guys in the back seat that were riding down for the first time with us. And Kyle Matthews was one of them. He went on to be a multiple-time Georgia Wrestler of the Year. Really good dude. It was his first time coming down with us. But I'm sitting there with the Bret Hart book in my lap. I'm reading it because I'm a huge Bret Hart fan. And this is right after I let Sal take the wheel. We're pulling out of a gas station, and he goes to you exit to the right, and then you do a little U-turn to come back to the red light. And as he U-turns, this dummy U-turns right in front of an oncoming car, and I look up to my right and say, Sal! Crashes right into us. And that was so that wreck happens, and our trip is ruined. Like, we're not getting to the show on time. Now, when we would do these shows, you would have a Friday night and a Saturday night, then you drive home on Sunday. So our Friday night is currently ruined. We're not going to make it to the show on time, and I'm having to call my insurance, get another car brought to us, get this car towed. And so they got us into another car a couple hours later, and so we finally get on the road again. I say, no, Sal, you can't drive anymore. I'm driving now. So we get about another hour down the road. We're in Florida at this point, and we stop at a Subway. And just to, because obviously it's been a long day, so we're hungry, going to get some sandwiches. We go into Subway, and I'm mad, like I'm ill at this point. And and Sal, of course, taking it upon himself, if he sees me being ill, he wants to try to cheer me up. Sal's way of cheering somebody up is if he sees you standing in front of one of those potato chip stands at Subway with the freestanding potato chips right there. He sees me walk in front of that, and he yells out, hockey check! And if hockey check means you hockey check somebody into a glass wall in hockey. Except he's hockey checking me into a potato chip stand.
Nice.
And potato chips go flying everywhere. And the people at Subway, I don't remember us getting in trouble. I just remember legitimately wanting to fight Sal after that. Sal had to run out of the building and run to the car, and I was fuming. We got to the show late, but me and Sal were still able to do our match. I think, okay, we didn't wrestle each other because I would have hurt him if we did. So we didn't wrestle each other, but we both got to do our matches. Then we go to the hotel that all the wrestlers are staying at. It's this, cheap hotel where, you're walking on the outside to, there is no inside hallways at this. And so all the wrestlers would convene in like two different rooms, but they're side by side. And so me and Sal are crossing paths as we're walking in front of one of these hotel rooms, and it's got a big glass window. You got your main entrance door and then a big glass window. And I see Sal pass in front of this glass window. And so, light bulb, hockey check time. I say, hockey check. And he goes flying through the glass. There was a wrestler sitting on the other side of that glass, sitting in his chair while they're all talking about whatever. And Sal goes landing in this guy's lap, glass goes everywhere. And there's like 30 wrestlers all around that see this. But the best part was you have just regular people across the way on the other side. They're thinking a murder was just committed or something. So police are getting called at this point. But I remember the hotel manager walks up, comes upstairs, and looks at the carnage, and just looks at everything and just says, "Oh, not again." All right, somebody come down. And I raised my hand and said, "I'm sorry, that was my fault." It was just like, oh, it's just another Tuesday for them, or another Saturday, whatever it was. And it was like $15 to replace that glass, and I paid them right there on the spot. So, and then after the next show, we went to the beach in Clearwater, Florida. And since Sal had a bunch of fresh cuts on his body, I took it upon myself to drop kick him into the ocean, hopefully let him burn a little bit more. So I tried to get my pay, tried to get my receipt on him. So that was just another classic day in the life.
There you go. What's the most challenging aspect of being a professional wrestler?
Challenging is, I would say maybe the physical side of things, like keeping your body, keeping your diet and everything like that. But the biggest thing is keeping your mind, your spirit, keeping positive about things. And that's not just with wrestling, that's with anything. If you're really going after a dream and you're trying to make something happen, chances are you got to starve to get there. And wrestling is no different. You'll go years and years, and you'll see somebody, a friend. I've seen many friends, Steve Walters, for instance, who went on to become Dash Wilder, Austin Creed, obviously, who went on to be a part of the New Day. You just see people that you're probably better than in the ring, but they've got that something extra. It's just Dash Wilder was friends with William Regal, and it's just who right place, right time. But it'll mess with you thinking, is this ever going to happen for me, kind of thing. But your place in the history, in the annals of time, in wrestling, that's it. Just make the most of it regardless. So that's the toughest part, is doing 20 years in wrestling and then looking back and seeing, when is my time? Is that coming? Should I just quit? You tell yourself to quit 5 years in, 10 years in, 15 years in, but then you think, well, no, maybe I'm just one step away. But it's all, you're living the dream no matter what. So positive mindset.
And that's how I feel with this podcast thing. I study, I look at film, I look at whatever, and I do this on like 5 times a week, and I know what I do is good, and I try to be professional. And then you see Busted Open with all those guys, and of course they're big names and stuff like that. This is an example. And you're like, I'll never get there, but
yeah.
But then you want to quit, and then you're like, no, you're doing this because you love it.
Yeah.
And that's why I do it. So, if you were not a wrestler, what would you be?
I would say my other dream, like I said, I was raised in a baseball home, baseball and wrestling, and I was a big time baseball, still am, huge baseball guy, huge Atlanta Braves guy, and was from absolutely tomahawk chop time. I first, it's not just the first wrestling memories. I have just as emotional memories of the Atlanta Braves from the 1991 World Series, when I was just old enough to know what baseball was, 5, 6 years old. The greatest World Series of all time, in my opinion, was the 1991 World Series with the Braves and the Twins. And, so I was going to pursue baseball pretty hard and loved playing it. I was always considered to be one of the best on my teams that I was playing on. But right at 11 years old, I was involved in a pretty bad car accident. I was on a bicycle, actually, and was hit head on by a car going 70 miles per hour, lost control, and broke my femur bone, snapped it in half. And so that cut my baseball career, at least cut it short for that season. And then, I'm going into my teenage years. So I never got back into baseball. I went into wrestling after that. So, but I never stopped loving baseball. And I'd like to think I probably could have done something with that.
Okay. So we talk about wrestlers, and then there's the fans. So how important are the fans?
That's what, I mean, that's what drives you. That's what it's not about what you're doing in the ring. It's not about the spots that you do. It's not about the signature moves that you come up with. It's about the fans' reactions. It's about creating those moments for them, those memorable moments that they take home. Um, it's just, I mean, obviously the fans is what it's all about. Um, it's important that you have a good level-headed mindset, keep yourself humble. Don't think you're above the fans kind of thing, because without the fans you don't have anything to do. You're just somebody in a squared circle. And a personal way for me to look at it is, I remember a great match that I had, again in my early 20s, and it was with a guy named Anthony Henry, who would go on to have he's still doing some really good stuff on the scene right now. And he was he- I was the leading him along in that match at the time, and I was putting on. I remember I showed up. I came from my job, my sales job that I had at the time, and I showed up like 15 minutes before bell time, and we're first match, and I'm defending a title against him. It was our called the North Georgia Championship of that wrestling in Royston, Georgia, and this was a big show event. And I get there right before bell time, and I lay out a match. It's like a Mr. Perfect Bret Hart match. So a lot of the stuff that they would do. And because me personally, I don't have favorite wrestlers as much as I have favorite chemistry. Two guys with chemistry. So I love watching Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart. I love watching Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. I love watching Ted DiBiase and Jake Roberts. I don't just like watching Ted DiBiase. If there's no Jake, then it's not the same thing. So I put together that kind of match, and I just remember at the end of that match when he gave me a big splash off the top, and the way he did it, I called it so, he would be angled behind me. My head would be like I'm on my back because I miss an elbow drop. He jumps to the top RVD style, but I'm like, where's he at? I don't know where he is. And by the time I figure it out, he's flying through the air and comes over the top of me, and boom, right on the top. Quick 1, 2, 3, and I just remember seeing a row of little kids on the top row of the stands, jump, as high as they could with excitement. And that to me is what made it. Just knowing that it made somebody jump, it made somebody happy, it made somebody remember that match. That's why you do it. You do it for their reaction.
That's awesome. Um, what is the misconception in the business that makes people question if what you guys do is fake or not?
The misconception in the business that makes people question whether it's fake or not. Well, unfortunately, um, the days of kayfabe are pretty much done, and so everybody wants that pat on the back for being a great artist, instead of being a great wrestler. So, um, you know, and hey, I got my moments too, because I consider myself an artist for the most part. You're a creator. You're creating stories and you're creating moments, but still, um, the best way to do that is to have um, that that suspension of disbelief, and have people, like, I just started. I had taken some time off after my daughter was born. I actually took 5 years out of wrestling, and then I just came back here very recently, and I've had two matches back just here in the last 2 months.
Oh,
And my second match back after 5 years, somebody came up and told me that they saw my match and they thought that was the one match that they thought was real. We were really going, and that's you gotta try and put that ego aside, and you know take the risk of don't worry about that pat on the back for being a good artist. You sacrifice your ego and let's do whatever we got to do to make people believe, if only for a few minutes, that they're watching a real fight. And that's, but that's just stages that we go through. Some people like to do high spots.
Even as a fan, like I said, the reason why I do the podcast is it's like self care for me. It gets me away from real life for 1-2 hours, and so there's an indie promotion here in the Panhandle in Panama City called XIW Extreme Impact Wrestling with Jackson Slade and Adrian Whisper and Vordell Walker and those guys, Damian Wayne, and those guys. And I attended one back February 2022.
Yeah.
And I went every other month since then because those guys that you don't go away thinking it's fake. I can just tell you that.
Yeah.
They put it all on the line and it's real.
Oh yeah. And I remember Vordell Walker when my first match ever for FIP was against Vordell Walker.
Yeah, big dude.
And then I went back and came back about a year later and finally started coming full time. But oh man, that was way back in the day. And Damian Wayne too. Oh, I miss him. Very good dude.
He's a friend of the podcast, a friend of mine. Matter of fact, I think he's working for Tri-State Wrestling right now.
Yeah.
And he's like the booker or promoter. So him and I are trying to work out things. So love the guy. The guy's amazing. So this is one of my favorite questions, and I didn't really get it until I spoke with Tokyo Monster Cajegas, which is a wrestler down in Florida here. And we talked about this for an length of time. How important is brotherhood in the business? And who would you call your brothers in the wrestling? And what does it mean to you paying your dues back to the business?
Brotherhood in the business. That is a very good question. And it's extremely important because, we talk about fans and how important that is. And that's one aspect. But the thing that the reason wrestlers have a hard time, the reason your guys like Ric Flair could never retire, it's not necessarily the moments in the ring, the moments in the spotlight. It's the moments with the boys. It's healthy competition, but you got each other's backs. It's those moments on the road, that we talk about. Like I said, too many stories to tell, and I could give you that one good one, but there's a whole lot more because you're trying to be real life superheroes together. You're just letting go of the everyday regular 9 to 5 expectation kind of thing, and you're just living as freely as possible, and hopefully without being a butt to anybody kind of thing, or being dangerous with anybody, but you're just having fun together. 8 hours in a car with completely, oh gosh, I remember being packed in a car, like going down to Florida or wherever we was going, packed like sardines in this car. Me sitting on, 3 guys in the back seat, me sitting in one of their laps. And then, the front seat's only supposed to have 2 people, but you got somebody sitting in the middle up there as well, because, we're all pretty much broke. None of us are making big money. So we're trying to keep it as cheap. No 2 cars, just 1 car. We're going to get down there in 1 car. And then I remember coming back, we stopped at a truck stop, still packed in like sardines. And this is after the shows. So we're all smelly, and this is guys packed in a car, smelling bad. It's, very uncomfortable. And I'm the kid of the car. So, I'm still 19, whatever I was at the time. I'm still the young boy in that car. So I'm not getting no comfortable place to sleep. And I'll never forget trying to sleep on somebody's lap or even in the floorboard or whatever I was. I finally opened up the car door and spilled outside. And I'll never forget hitting that concrete in that truck stop parking lot and then just saying, you know what? I'm going to lay right here in this parking lot on this concrete. I'm staring up at the stars saying, what am I doing here? Kind of thing. But you're just at the same time, that's one of my favorite memories. It's that moment of just you're just living your dream and you're living it with these guys, and that's what you miss. You see these guys I'm talking about in that car. A couple of them aren't with us anymore. Jimmy Rave was one of those guys. He's no longer with us. But you can run into those guys tomorrow, and it's like you've never missed a beat. They're your brothers. And so yeah, the brotherhood is that's the backbone of all of it.
Paying your dues, is that important to you too? Paying the
Oh,
dues.
everybody's got to pay the dues. You gotta crawl before you walk. You're gonna have to eat the poop and like it every now and again. Um, it's and paying the dues is whatever paying the dues is. There is no set rules for paying dues. It's just whatever it is at the time. Whatever it's whatever the veterans need you to do. It's CM Punk looking at you and trying to make you feel embarrassed or make you feel like you're the odd man out, make you feel like you've got heat in the locker room, but it's all just to make you feel shaken. It's to help make you stronger, even though you feel scared at the moment. But it's just whatever rib they can think of, and you got to be able to keep your cool and to know that, man, it's just part. You call it hazing if you want to. It's got to be there a little bit. You got to know that you can take it. And then you learn how to dish it out. And but it's all in good fun. That's what leads to the brotherhood. Ultimately, is just messing with each other.
Right. We're talking about brotherhood and talking about the talent in the back like CM Punk, Samoa Joe's, the big Fitzes from CWF, the Guardian from CWF, all the legends or whatever, the older wrestlers. How important is it for you guys as youngsters to pay attention to what they have to say?
Well, that's first and foremost, that's part of paying the dues. That's part of leading to your brotherhood. Show respect. Uh, the only thing I'll say that I learned as I became a veteran in my own right and a leader, whatever, you you know, everybody's got to figure it out in your own way. There is, um, you know, the thing about wrestling in this world that we call professional wrestling is there is no specific right way to do things. No, there you're taught basics from the start, ABC all the way down to Z. But then once you get in there and you feel it, you become your own person. That alphabet becomes whatever you want it to be. It ultimately becomes your own language. But the point is the people you're in there with, they got to be able to communicate with that language as well. So you don't want to, be uncommunicable, but but you always want to listen to what guys have to offer. Show them that respect. Say thank you so much for being willing to help me. I'll never forget Colt Cabana. He would just in the FIP days, he would mess with me, and he wouldn't really give me much advice. But then there was this one match, and this match is actually on YouTube. I was showing it to my daughter not long ago. It was a match I had with Hallow Wicked, and it was an opening match of that show. And it was this was a match where I was becoming a leader in my own right, finally, being the captain of that match and leading Hallow Wicked through it. And after that match, I'll just never forget Colt Cabana coming up to me, like coming straight to me as soon as I got to the back and sitting me down and saying, "Hey, man," he wanted to, say, "Hey, instead of this, what you should have done here is this and this." And, it was like, regardless of whether I would listen to him, it's that he wanted to come and share that with me finally after, however long I had been there with him up to that point. It's just great that they want to be able to help you. So, but then use it if you can, if not, but that's help. That's your brothers there. Listen to them.
True. So I told you in the beginning that I care for 8 kids. And at dinner time, we talk about what we're going to do. They ask me, what am I doing tonight? I said, I have a podcast. And then, so we have these kids, I call them kid questions.
Yeah.
So it's just rapid fire kid questions. They want to know favorite movie.
Oh, favorite movie. Favorite movie. Man, Forrest Gump.
Favorite TV show.
Saved by the Bell.
Books you enjoy reading.
Shack. The Shack.
That's good. Favorite food.
Seafood pasta.
Cartoon.
Oh, Ninja Turtles.
You play video games.
Yes.
One.
Baseball. MLB The Show.
Good game. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
Do you acknowledge the tribal chief?
Say what?
Do you acknowledge the tribal chief?
Do I acknowledge? Everybody has to. He's earned that spot.
A TikTok question, and it's a joke. Don't overthink it. Who is the greatest WCW champion ever?
David Arquette.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So now we're going to walk into the CWF portion of the show. Talk about CWF. Talk about the legends that you have been blessed to meet and have worked with in the CWF.
CWF. Well, you got to start with Rob Vaughn. Rob Vaughn, Chris Angel, I think is what Chris Allman is his name. I'm trying to remember if he went by Chris Angel. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
And he was my first match,
wow.
I believe, for CWF. And obviously Ryan Hart, JT, and Shiloh. Oh, and of course Phil, brother Phil. That man is just, but it started as, Chris, kind of being the main locker room leader, Ryan Hart, of course, and Shiloh as well. But, Phil was just always there, and he stayed true to it, and just, Rob's right-hand man. And, but he's just the funniest dude that I know. And at the same time, just the best hearted guy. He just loves genuinely, and he never is mad about anything. I love Phil. I always look forward to seeing him if I know it's coming up. He's just my favorite dude.
Yeah, man. So are you a fan of the Bible Club?
Since they've, I want to say my last time with CWF, which I believe was 2019. So yeah, it was like right. I was booked to come back, and then the coronavirus hit, and everything got canceled, and then I just hadn't been able to come back since. But I think the Bible Club was just starting then, and so yeah, I am a fan of them, man. They're I see the stuff that they've been doing. I want to go back now that they're really running good, and just do anything with them.
Yeah, man. Big fan. I love those guys there. Rob Vaughn is amazing. I've not interviewed him yet, but he shows up at when they're doing MC and stuff, and I've made some great friends there. I cannot say anything negative about it. The plan, we talk about a plan, of course, nothing, as it gets closer, it might work into existence, but my plan was to try to get down there December 2024 for the cage matches.
Yeah.
And sit ringside and do some commentary. So for the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, that's my.
That's December of 2024, though.
Yeah. I got plans for 2023 already. So. But.
Well, I thought they have some big shows. I guess middle of next year. So I think they have some big shows in April or May or something.
Well, I'm going on a cruise in May. April's my anniversary. I don't know what we're doing yet, so I have to, happy life, happy wife, happy wife, happy life. Man. Priorities, right? How did you start your involvement and get your involvement with CWF-Rockwall? What happened? How did you come across them?
All right. Well, I was just telling somebody this story last night, knowing that I was going to be talking with you tonight, and but talking about Rob Vaughn. So. Like I said, AJ Styles planted a seed in me when I was 14 years old. And then I went off and lived some wild years. And And then at 22, February 7th, 2008, I was saved and accepted Christ into my heart. And then for the rest of that year, I just was living life like normal. You know, I was saved, but I didn't know what to do with what was going on in my heart. Uh, Finally, January 18th, 2009, I was baptized at my church. And then it was really weighing on my heart after that. Like, God, what do you want me to do? I mean, it's like, okay, am I even supposed to be wrestling? I made my promise to God at 13 years old. This is what I was going to do, and I wasn't changing for nothing. And then you hear stories from people, from pastors saying, yeah, I said the same thing. And then God came to me and said, nope, you're going to do whatever I tell you to do. And then, that's the way it is. You get called to something and that's what you do. But, I felt like God had given me a talent to be a storyteller, to be an artist, so to speak, and to be an athlete at the same time. So until I knew for certain, I just knew I needed to do something with this. But what God do you want me to do? So it turns out AJ Styles and Caprice Coleman, who was also big time in the Wild Side days, had been through CWF before. So remember hearing about it. My buddy Chad Parham, who's also been with CWF over the years, tag team partner of mine, old buddy. He had mentioned it to me, like, oh, what about Christian Wrestling Federation out of Texas? And so this is 2009. I Google CWF, go to the website, looking up the website, and I'm just trying to figure out, oh, what all do they do? Just looking them up, reading about them, looking at the pictures and everything. And then I see on the schedule of November 2009 that they're going to Egypt. And so I'm like, oh, it just clicked in that moment. God was telling me that's what you're doing. You're going to Egypt. You're gonna. It just felt like that's where he's calling me to go. But he's calling me. I knew I got to get to CWF and let it roll. So I emailed Rob Vaughn and told him how much I just told him my story, how much I want to come down. He calls me back and we have like an hour talk over the phone. And I mentioned that I'd love to go to Egypt with them. Saw that y'all are going to Egypt, and I just want to come, be a part of whatever y'all are doing, whatever mission trips you're doing. I'd love to do it. What I didn't know at the time was Rob gets a lot of calls from people, even big name wrestlers, people calling all the time trying to get a booking because they see they're going somewhere. But Rob, he cares about the real mission. He doesn't care about, just going somewhere big to look good, to get views or whatever. He cares about what you're actually going there for. He cares about changing lives. So he wasn't just going to let anybody in. He's told a lot of people no, and that's what I didn't know. Rob actually did something with me that he pretty much never does. He gave me that chance. Egypt in itself, that was reserved for the guys like Ryan Hart, like Shiloh, like Chris, the guys who have been there and been loyal to it and stick with it. That's for them. And here's this newcomer wanting to come in and go to Egypt. But Rob told me, all right, here, I'll make you a deal. You pay your way, come down here, and this was in the dead heat, August of 2009. Come pay your way, come to Texas, do a show, and then we'll talk about Egypt. And I said, bet, I'll see you there. And so I came down. The rest is history. We got to go to Egypt, but hey, Egypt, that was just one little part. Man, we've done so many amazing things since, gone so many places, and just going down, just hanging out in Dallas for a day is just the funnest thing in the world for me.
It seems like a fun place.
Come on, let's go.
I'll be there. How would you compare a locker room at CWF to a locker room at NWA, ROH, any other promotion? And how do you switch from the mindset of, because but I think the answer is simple. Once you're a Christian, it should be no big deal. You follow Jesus, and this is what what would Jesus do? Would be that bracelet I'd be wearing. Because so is that the mindset you keep when you go to a secular event, or is it hard to transition between Christian Wrestling Federation to something different?
I was debating on telling this sort of embarrassing story. Before I was saved, maybe 20 years, like I said, I was a wild dude for those few years before I was saved. And I remember going to a Christian show, and I don't remember who was running it. I don't remember what it was called, but it was in Georgia, and I did this show. But I remember I was using secular language in the middle of that ring. I remember I was had a horrible attitude. I thought that I was, above everybody there. Uh, and I just remember saying something really, really wrong in the middle of the ring, some bad word about some moment. And referee uh, who worked for that company, who was reffing our match, looks and says, "Seth, this is a Christian show." And I was like, I just remember, I was like, well, so, I can say what I want to do. Man, fast forward 2 years later and I get saved. Once the Holy Spirit comes into your heart, you're right. That's what leads the way. So you go into a Christian Wrestling Federation show, that locker room is like no other locker room in the world, man. It's nothing but love going on there. There's ribs, there's everything going on like that, but it's love. And no bad words flying around. It's all happy, it's fun. You got Phil telling just the silliest Phil lines that he can think of, and Rob laughing at the top of his lungs at anything Phil says. It's all just good. It's all fun. You go into another locker room, though, that is what stays. You are the thermostat. You're not the thermometer. So that light goes with you. You are not being affected by the environment you in. You are the effect. You are the help change agent. You are the tool that God uses wherever you go. So yeah, it's not hard for me to change. Everybody knows what Seth is when Seth comes in. Seth is a follower of Jesus Christ. Seth has had the Holy Spirit in his heart. Seth has been knocked down by the Holy Spirit. Seth is part of one political party, and that's Christian.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Is there anyone in the CWF locker room that you have your eyes on, like Big Fitz, JT, the Guardian, Luke 9? Who do you want to take out if you ever get a chance to go out to that CWF-Rockwall?
You know, let's see. I don't. I haven't really got to wrestle Ryan Hart. I haven't really got to wrestle JT. I remember I got to work with him a little bit in Egypt. But after that, I remember he went through some changes at some point, and he ended up losing for a minute. So I didn't ever really get to have something fun with him. So if I ever get back, I'd love to do something with him. But really, man, it's just at my age, at my place in my career, in my time in wrestling, I am open to anybody they have. Bullet Club, whatever they got. I'm just happy to be there. Sorry to be cliche about it, but I'd love to get in there with Ryan Hart and two vets going at it, and two brothers going at it, and having fun. But yeah, man, the young talent as well. A lot of them I haven't got to meet. I haven't got to meet them yet. So that makes it even more fun is when you're meeting them for the first time and then getting in the ring with them for the first time, and then that's how you get to know each other, is bashing each other around a little bit. So hopefully one day.
Well, I stream on a place called Live.Space, and the founder of Live, or co-founder, his name's Todd. He says he loved actually. You are the thermostat, not the thermometer. You like that statement, so yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I live by that. That's one of my favorite.
Awesome. I want to put that in my tool belt, and go, that's a good statement.
Thank you.
Is there a Mount Rushmore of talent that you would like to face in the CWF, NWA, or ROH? Who would you want to face?
Go back to CWF a little bit. Barrett Brown. I got to do a triple threat match with him at my last ever show with CWF was with Barrett and Chris Allman. and it was a three-way. But I'd love to do a singles with Barrett, and you know, I gotta say, a lot of times I'm thinking of guys that I probably wrestled with before, but I'd love to kind of come back with, and as far as running around on the indies or something, Anthony Henry, who had his time with the cruiserweight division in WWE, and he's actually working. Anthony Henry is signed to AEW now, but he's a great old friend of mine, and I'd love to go with him again and really test. I was once he's going to be the one leading me, so I love that change of dynamic. I'd love to feel a little bit inferior there with somebody, and test my way a little bit, and probably even Sal Renaro again. He's got to be on a Mount Rushmore in my life anyway, in my career. Sal Renaro for sure, because he's been such a huge part of my career, and he was my actual last match that I had. We had a retirement storyline that we did, and he was the guy who super kicked me, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair style, and I'd love to go with him again. And who else after that? I got 3 so far. I don't know. AR Fox, maybe. I've always wanted to wrestle him. I think I did one tag match with him right before he started hitting big, and I would love to go with him again. That'd be fun.
You mentioned Barrett Brown. Barrett Brown's on the show next Monday.
Really?
Is there any shots fired? I mean, are you going to challenge him? I mean, you can do it right on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast if you want. I mean, and we can.
Well, last time I was paying attention, he was, I don't know if he's doing it much anymore, but he was saying, trained by Barrett Brown. That was his thing. I don't know if he's still going with that or not, but either way, I was humoring him a bit because I knew I was kind of on my way the last time we met, since my daughter was born and I was, taking a break. But now I think I'm in the best shape of life right now. And, I know he feels pretty good about himself. He's a very disciplined dude. And he's a guy who balances both, secular and Christian locker rooms very well. But, he can say training all he wants. But let's just go with the old line that there are things I've forgotten that he's never even learned or heard of before. So I could teach him a little something.
There you go, Barrett Brown. We'll talk more about that on next Monday's show. So,
love you, Barrett.
Shots fired. Let me see. To close the show, how about do you feel comfortable sharing your testimony?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So raised in Georgia, just like anybody, you family, not really Christian families, not really raised by a Christian family, but this is the time in our country where everybody would say they're Christians. You go knock door to door, most people would open up their door and say, "Hey, are you a Christian family?" And most of them would say yes, but very few actually would be. So that was kind of the environment. I think times are a little different now. I think more people would, say, "Oh no, we're not no Christian." That's just kind of the country that we live in right now. But that's what I was raised under, and but I always questioned, well, I think there's something out there, but I don't know for sure. And the biggest thing is, if you know there's a God and you accept him into your heart, that means I got to change. I have to not say certain things anymore. I can't do these things anymore. It's like, oh, I'm going to feel like I'm being shackled up now. Like I'm tied up. I got to be a good person now. And that's literally the fear that I had. And I know it's a fear that a lot of people have. People may not want to go to church because, oh, they just want my money. I've heard that line so many times. But it's, like I said, you get around the right person, you get around an AJ Styles, somebody that wants to, do that work for God, plant that seed. And that helped me. And it was just being around an AJ Styles, for instance. I give him far more credit once I really put thought into it. He was a very important part, because then every time I'd be around him, he was somebody I wanted to be like. So that's what you want to be for people around you, is just be that positive influence that man, I want to be like that guy. I want to have what he has. And so you remember that. And then a lot of times what happens is things start to hit rock bottom for you. You may be going through something tough. And so yeah, at the time I was going through a pretty not with like a job or anything, but I guess maybe in relationships at the time, and then I met somebody that that was a Christian and was like a Pentecostal Christian, and that was the first time I started learning about that Pentecostal Holy Spirit way of being a Christian. And but it just, again, it's that being around those people. At this point I'm 22 years old. That's from 2007 coming into 2008, and I was around the right people at the right time, and I just wanted that. I felt, I remember going to something at UGA campus, like a Christian meeting at UGA campus, like a small group type thing, and watching a Tom Brady interview where he's talking about he's got these 3 rings, whatever he had, however many rings he had at the time, but he still felt like something was missing. That was way back then. Tom Brady just now retired. It's like that dude never could find that piece, but he's just missing something. And that's how it feels in your life, is you're just missing something. But then when you're around the right people, they have that warmth. They feel like they're fulfilled with something, and you find out what that is, and that's Jesus Christ. So on February 7th, 2008, I was with some fellow Christian people, prayed over me. I accepted Christ into my heart, and then it's, now what do I do with this, God? What do you want me to do? And that's how you live your life every single day, is what can I do to honor you today, God? Please. And what, find out what your talents are, find out what you're meant for. What are you good at? You may not even know it yet. It might be something you've never thought of, but God's got some kind of plan for you. And when you have it, there's nothing like it. There is no man. Shackles are gone. Stop worrying about, oh, I got to change. Nope. You're going to be happy with this kind of change. It's nothing like it.
Absolutely, man. I can tell my mom passed away on the 22nd of October, and the scripture from Psalms 30, 11, and 12 says, "Find joy in the morning." That took a lot of people. It's find joy in the morning. How am I supposed to find joy with something like that just happened? But that verse means so much to me, because when I got to the funeral, before I spoke to my in front for about my mom, all my cousins, all my nieces, nephews, even my kids would share funny stories of mom. And that's the joy that you want to find in the morning, because there is joy. If she's not sick no more, she's in heaven. Man, she was a Jesus freak from top to bottom. This woman, she loved Jesus. She was amazing, and so, but yeah, every day you live it and you see it, and I know that I was just telling the story. I know the difference between doing what you want to do and to what God wants to do.
Yeah.
And I found that out the hard way. I can tell you. Um, like I said, we're working with youth, in childcare, and we came about to do that because I don't know what that echo is. Well, we came to do it because God was speaking to me at the same time he was speaking to my wife when we lived in Michigan. I didn't know it. She didn't know it. And we came together at lunch and shared, and we started bawling that this is what God wanted for us. So in my heart, I knew that's what we needed to do. I knew that was what God wanted to do. Well, fast forward 4 more years, and I decided I wasn't happy where I was. I wanted to go somewhere else to do the same thing. And I painted this picture, Disney World. We could be Florida pass holders, blah, blah, blah. And mind you, I was on no meds at this point in time. We made the move because that's what Scott wanted to do. 2 years later, I'm on cholesterol meds, heart meds, and everything. And we moved away from there back to where we were where God sent us the first time, and we've been happy since. And God's blessed us over and over. So I know there's the difference between doing it my way and God's way. And I'm always going to do it God's way, because if I don't, man, it's not good.
Yeah, it's always yep. That's how it goes, man. You try to do it your way, you're gonna find out fast, and then you take that risk, you take that jump, and yeah, that's an awesome story, man. And I'm sorry to hear about your mother. And
thank you. She's a blessing. I know she's up looking down at this podcast with joy, you know. So I do really know. I know that. I know that. I know that. I know that. I know, you know. And
yeah,
that's why it's, you know, yeah. So one last question. Um, I'd like you to. Could you tell the fans where to find you? And what is your big goal for the end of 2023 and into 2024? Is there a promotion you want to get to? What is the goal? And then can you tell everybody where to find you? And after you're doing that, I will play a exit song, but don't go nowhere. Stay in the lobby because I would like to say thank you.
absolutely. Um, Big goals for me. Well, first off, Seth Delay, come find me. Type in Seth Delay. As far as I know, I'm the only Seth Delay walking around this earth. I don't think there's any others. And just come find me, check me out, follow me. I'm always, trying to have fun with whatever I do. Me and my little girl, me and my boys. Um, you know, and as far as wrestling is concerned, and also, I work with the youth ministry at my church, and so it's just constant growth and trying to help grow God's kingdom. As far as wrestling goes, I just started back after my hiatus, and so but so far things are feeling really good. Everybody's really happy with my work. I'm happy with my work, and that's a rare thing. It's rare to actually feel like, whoa, I actually like what I'm doing already, and because I thought it would take a minute before I would start really feeling good. So as far as whatever's next, right before I took my hiatus, I was really trying to work with. There's a promotion called like Wildcat Sports out of Louisiana. Luke Hawks runs it, and he's a great old friend of mine. And I was one of the first to contact him to try and be a part of his promotion, and we started a connection, but then it just ended up not working out, and things fell through. But I've always wanted to go out there and actually be a part of his show, and other than that, man, it's sky's the limit. Just get flowing good and start killing it wherever we go, and come back to Texas, obviously, and let's just see what God has in store.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on, sharing your story all the way from the beginning as a kid up to now. I wish you luck, my friend, in the end of 2023 and the 2024. Maybe our path will cross. Maybe I'll get to meet you in person. Who knows? But I'll stay in touch with you on social media. I love what you're doing, and bless your family. So again, don't go anywhere. I'll meet you in the lobby. Okay.
All right.